morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where yesterday, late in the day, a headline broke that shook genre fandom to its very core. And that's that Star Wars The Force Awakens has been unseated already as the most watched trailer of all time in the first 24 hours of its release. It was a squeaker. 112 million times was Star Wars' number, and this new trailer, 50 Shades Darker, pulled in 114 million views. It's just a 2 million view difference, but we have a new record holder. And the movie itself, that 50 Shades Darker unseated Star Wars The Force Awakens, made this even more soul-shattering to many genre fans. And I think was an interesting reminder of two things. One, there are other movie fandoms out there besides comic books and sci-fi, basically the genre fandom. And that's really an interesting fact to be reminded of because, let's be honest, genre fandom dictates online, dominates and dictates online conversation. So for another fandom to come in here so powerfully, well, actually, it was a kind of like a surprise attack because we're going to talk about the lack of media coverage in just a moment. So they rallied and were able to get this record-breaking number. The other thing that it's a reminder of, though, is that the American audience being the tastemaker, those days are waning. And, we thought that just China might challenge the American audience for dictating what Hollywood will make. But it seems that, when all the other nations of the world band together, like they seem to be doing with the 50 Shades franchise, they can also have a strong effect. So let me put this into perspective about what's been happening to me over the past 24 hours or so. So I posted my shot-by-shot analysis of the 50 Shades Darker trailer, and after it was up for about a day, a couple of hardcore 50 Shades fans found it, and they were like, "What are you talking about? It didn't trend on Twitter," because that's how I opened my analysis. I talked about the fact that it never trended here in the United States nationwide. They showed me screen grabs of it trending worldwide, which I thought was very interesting. And they said, hey, look, this has always been a foreign franchise. If you look at the original box office, 166 million domestic, but that was just 29% of its overall gross because it pulled in 404 million overseas. That's huge. It's a little bit like Transformers, which sees its domestic numbers falling with each installment, but its foreign numbers rising to compensate for that and keep the Transformers series in the $1 billion club. Now, 50 Shades isn't a $1 billion franchise, but it pulled in over between 500 and 600 million with its first installment. So this is quite encouraging. I don't think it's going to make the 166 number this time based on the reaction to the 50 Shades Darker trailer stateside, but its foreign numbers could indeed go up Transformers style, and so you could see the same scenario happening, and the third installment moving forward for 50 Shades, no problem, because Universal, will get that money somehow. Now, I've supported Transformers. I support 50 Shades. I see the appeal in both franchises, and I can understand why they do well. I think Transformers is getting a little bit harder to defend, but I still think 50 Shades is, quite interesting. I think it's also worth pointing out that with the first film, it had a softer rating in Europe in particular. France, for instance, only gave it a 12 rating. So maybe that's another reason that they have, a better box office result, whereas in the United States, 50 Shades was rated R. Some argued they felt it should be NC-17. I feel it should have been NC-17, but it got an R rating because filmmakers have become so good at tricking the MPAA. Look at Sausage Party, another film I felt should have been NC-17. But anyway, let's break down the trailer view numbers for 50 Shades Darker. Again, it came ahead 2 million of Star Wars The Force Awakens, and it made 39.4 million views in the United States and 74.6 million views overseas. Largely, the countries that were name-checked in the coverage were the UK, Mexico, and France. And if you look at 50 Shades of Grey's foreign box office, it did particularly well in Europe. Again, it did 50 million in the UK, which is very unusual. That's a huge number for the UK. It did well in France. It did well in Spain. You're seeing really strong numbers from Europe. So Europe is supporting the 50 Shades franchise, which might be one of the reasons that they shot some of the film there, some of the franchise there to show their support. And I think that's a very savvy move. So this is a fascinating development. I will be continuing with my 50 Shades coverage, just as I cover the Transformers series. And I'd be curious to what you think of this. I think we should, even if you're not part of the 50 Shades fandom, I think we should be respectful of the fact that that kind of viewership is really impressive, particularly when it was not supported by the American media. I know a couple of websites posted that they had the trailer up, as some hardcore 50 Shades fans said in the defense, but it was not something that was covered, to the point where it would trend all day in the United States. So the United States, North America, not particularly interested in 50 Shades, but hey, they don't need to come to the party for it to be a success. And I think that's fascinating. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day is this rumor, which Alan Ritchson, this actor, seems to have started himself by apparently during like a discussion with a fan, they said, hey, you're going to be Shazam in the Dwayne Johnson, Shazam Black Adam movie, right? And Alan Ritchson said, yup. And so I don't know if he just was saying it to say it, or maybe he's like, why not say yes? And let's get the rumor mill started and maybe I'll get the part. Or maybe he actually does have the role, which to me would be absolutely ridiculous. Now, who is Alan Ritchson? I had to look it up. Alan Ritchson does the voice and I guess the motion capture work for Raphael in the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. He was also on Smallville as Aquaman. More on that in just a few moments. And also, he was Gloss in the Hunger Games. And also, when I saw, I was like, I got to see some of this guy's work. And so I looked up on YouTube and there was a clip of him doing a comedy bit in The Wedding Ringer, the Kevin Hart, Josh Gad movie. And he was pretty bad. So I put a link to that down below. Although if you are an Alan Ritchson fan, please, if you have evidence of some better acting, please leave a link down below in the comment section to make all of us feel a little bit better. But anyway, basically, when I saw that this might actually be potentially true, my first reaction is, what the hell, Snyder? Stop ab casting, right? Like, I don't know why Zack Snyder seems to be casting actors based on their physiques. I mean, considering what can be done today by the costume department and visual effects, and just even sometimes spray paint, Hollywood's infamous for spray painting abs onto people. I see no reason why you would cast somebody based, and also, on their physical appearance, especially because Zack Snyder has a guy in his employ, his go-to bulk up guy, who he puts all of his actors to work with in a boot camp to make them look the way he needs them to look for superhero movies. And so it's kind of ridiculous that he would cast someone with so little experience. If I were Dwayne Johnson, I would never approve it. I still think Channing Tatum is a good bet, although I saw a lot of people with discussion of this Alan Ritchson situation be like, oh, it's better than Channing Tatum. And it's like, no, he's not when it comes to like acting or box office or, media appeal. It's just really, this is the kind of fan casting that I've been talking about, why I was so disappointed in the Joe Manganiello story, which turned out to be true. So maybe this Alan Ritchson story is true as well, which would, I'd say, be even worse. Like, talk about like not fixing the Joe Manganiello situation, talk about doubling down on it. But then I was like, well, I don't know if Zack Snyder would be involved in the Shazam casting unless he's going to continue overseeing the DCEU in addition to John Berg and Jeff Johns. But speaking of Jeff Johns had a very tight relationship with the folks over at Smallville, writing a number of episodes for that show, etc. So it would make sense to me that he was like, hey, let's give this guy a chance. I met him on the Smallville set. He's awesome, Alan Ritchson. I'm totally game for him to be our new Billy Batson in the Shazam movie. To which I would say the CW actors, I'm sure, are ecstatic, saying like, we could be in the movies now. But to what I would say, TV actors, particularly CW TV actors, are of a different caliber than what you want for a film. How would, Dwayne Johnson supposed to be becoming like this big powerhouse? How would he feel standing next to Alan Ritchson? Unless he's like, I'm going to be the star of this movie, even if it means casting Alan Ritchson opposite me. I don't want to compete with Channing Tatum for fans, which I think is stupid because, he has Zac Efron in Baywatch. I think that a Dwayne Johnson, Channing Tatum team up would be amazing since they're both such strong comedians and just really fun professional guys. But so also, if they ever do crossovers, how do you put Ben Affleck and Jared Leto in a room with Alan Ritchson? I'd just be like, are you kidding me, DC? Like, seriously? This is really come on. It's like, it just seems like a free-for-all. I also think that it's going to be confusing to people who are fans. Like, they're like, oh, but isn't that Aquaman? Like, what are you going to do if he has a scene with Jason Momoa as Aquaman? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm curious, what do you think of this? I really hope it's not true. This would just be such a bad, for every good move that DC makes, like the amazing new Batsuit, tactical Batsuit, they make a step, it's like one step forward, two steps back, that famous saying. It's just crazy. Very frustrating. All right, so the third story of the day, talk about frustrating, is that Rogue One is replacing its composer. They're going to hire Michael Giacchino, who is a wonderful composer, by the way, but it just creates an interesting situation. So let me explain why I think it's so interesting. So the person who was supposed to score the movie was Alexandre Desplat, who, scored a number of things, but apparently also Godzilla, which of course is the film that Gareth Edwards, his first big movie. So I think that with every passing day, Rogue One becomes less and less of a Gareth Edwards movie, which is really kind of sad, but also very telling of the work I guess he handed into Disney. And more of a Disney corporate film, because Michael Giacchino is a huge Disney talent. He has scored almost all of the recent Pixar movies. He scored Zootopia, crossing over to Disney Animation. He's doing his first Marvel movie this year, Doctor Strange. He also has substituted for John Williams before, of course, talking about the famous, iconic Star Wars soundtrack. And this would actually be the first Star Wars film not scored by John Williams, which is, a great feather in Michael Giacchino's cap. But he's worked in the John Williams sandbox before doing Jurassic World. I also think he probably got the gig because J.J. Abrams, who, did The Force Awakens and is still involved over at Lucasfilm, is a huge close friend of Michael Giacchino, and they've collaborated together on many projects since Lost. So he has an in that way. And I think Michael Giacchino is a fantastic composer, extremely, if a little derivative, but, some could say derivative, some could say schooled in his industry of choice. I mean, he really knows how to name check famous past composers like John Williams, Henry Mancini, etc., Bernard Herrmann, etc., etc. But I did really appreciate his score not only on, say, The Incredibles, but also even on a movie like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which was a medium movie, but the score in particular really stood out. So I have no doubt in my mind that Michael Giacchino can do a fantastic job with Rogue One. But I do feel a little bad for Gareth Edwards. I don't know why his name is even still on this thing. But also what's interesting to me is to replace the composer so close to the release of the movie. I mean, you're talking about scoring a film, recording that score and editing it into the picture with just 4 months to go prior to release. And that's usually, you would think they just would have 3 months because they want to start screening it for people in the industry, critics, etc. So it kind of really needs to be ready a month early. Also to order prints, etc. I mean, Disney can just throw money at this thing to make it, to hurry it up and to overcome these obstacles, but still, it's probably a stressful environment. And also, I did look it up. Apparently, you can score a film in 3 months, but obviously it's not ideal. But it's doable. So I think that if they were going to get a new composer, and apparently they did, the official reason is that the change in schedule made Desplat no longer available because he had other commitments, and because of the reshoots, he couldn't score the film when he'd planned to. And Michael Giacchino, I'm sure, is a really good company guy. They're like, we can rely on Mike. He does all of our films over here at Disney. So it's interesting. I'm very curious to see the score he comes up with because, again, I think he's immensely talented, but I'm also really curious to see how Rogue One has turned out, considering it's being done so seat of the pants. But you know what other movie was done the same manner as a last-minute rush job? Frozen, and that turned out great. So let's just see. I mean, I didn't like it, but it was a huge success. Let's see what happens with Rogue One. A lot riding on this to see if The Force Awakens was genuinely reawoken the Star Wars franchise, and if there's that genuine interest in it, or if it was just the first one back. All right, so let's get on to the viewer question of the day. This is a really compelling viewer question, which I thought would interest a number of you. This is from Xander F. And Xander says, "Hi, Grace. I love your work so much. You really helped me with a lot of the mechanics of trying to become a film and novel writer. But I have a question. At the moment, money is really tight and I'm not even in school yet, but I'm trying to get into real filmmaking. I have a myriad of movies I really want to produce and direct, and I'm considering starting with this horror thriller flick I've had in mind for years, majorly because you once said upon a time that such films are often the cheapest to make. My question is, how can a poor boy like myself even begin making movies? Finding actors, location, equipment, funding, etc. I know this is kind of a loaded question, but whatever you'll give, I'll hold dear. Lots of heart emojis. Well, Xander, great question, and I'm sure there are many other fellow filmmakers watching today, so if you have any advice for Xander, I would really appreciate it. I'm sure Xander would as well if you would share it in the comments down below. Now, as for your questions, Xander, now I think you really have to ask yourself, what is your end game and what's your short game? What are you interested, the long and short game for yourself? You have to answer some of these questions. But let's just first say that I think that a horror thriller film is a great first movie to make. Not only is it cheap, as I did say, but it's where they look for a lot of new talent. James Wan, Wes Craven, all of these people have made their name through horror films. Even to some degree, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Oh, it's so horrible. Drew Goddard. He came through horror. So it's really important to come up through the horror place. The horror genre. It's a great entrance point into Hollywood. So there are a couple of, this is my advice to you. Now, creatively, I would say, go make the movie, get your practice in. It's going to be a learning experience, especially if it's like your first movie. It's going to take you a couple to really get your idea of how to make movies and what your voice is as a filmmaker. So totally get started. And also you can even get started by just working on your storyboards, for instance, and also reading up on how to budget a movie, how to shoot one, how to make a schedule. That's something you can do right now while you're trying to maybe brainstorm on how to get the money. First, put the picture together so it's ready to be shot. Write your script, do your storyboards again, put together a budget, put together a shooting schedule, do all of that while you're brainstorming on how to get the right funds so you can hit the ground running when the answer comes to you. As for funding, you could always do a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo page. That's one way to go. You can make like a little short pitch, video pitch, maybe, share your idea. That's so you can get money that way. Sometimes you can, there are local film clubs, people like yourself who are interested who might be willing to donate time. And I wouldn't be so concerned with making this the most professional first endeavor. Again, it's going to be a learning experience. You just want to get your feet wet, get experience making a movie and telling a story visually. And so that's really an important thing to remember. Now, at the same time that you're doing all of this, I think you really need to think to yourself, okay, well, how am I going to get my foot in the door? I would really start looking up directors that you like and see what their path to success was. What do they enter? They go through the film festival market? Were they someone's assistant? Just try and take a different look at all the different things that people do. Also, I don't know where you live, but I don't know if it's a strong film production place, but you might want to consider, relocating to one of those places, especially if you're not in school. There's nothing maybe beyond family tying you to your current location. So big film places in the United States, I'm just assuming you're in the US, forgive me if I'm wrong. You can go to New York, Los Angeles, but also Austin, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia are really big production places. Also Canada, they do a lot of stuff in Vancouver. So that's another place you could potentially relocate. Then, Hollywood is a business of connections. Filmmaking is even at any level, filmmaking is a business of connections. So you want to start making fellow filmmakers like yourself, people who are interested. You want to maybe get a job, maybe assisting somebody, just get in there. And so maybe an opportunity could arise for you to really pursue what you're interested in doing. So that's my advice to you. That's what I would tell you. That's where I would start, because it sounds like you're right at like square one. And also, I don't know what level of school you're talking about. I'm assuming college. But, you have to also think about, time passing. And at a certain point, is it worth it going to school? And also, if you're going to go to school, considering you said money's tight, think about what's the best investment. Sometimes you could invest money in school and it doesn't get you anything. Also, should you be focusing on, instead of going to school for film, should you be going to school for a backup career to support you financially while you try to do film and writing literature. Also, keep in mind when you pick a backup career, that could end up being your career, so make sure it's something that you're actually genuinely interested in as well. Because, it's a marathon, not a sprint in the entertainment business, so you need something that can sustain you. You need your rations, and in this case, that's money to pay for not only your endeavors but your housing, and so that you have the freedom to go after your dreams. You need capital to some degree. And also, if you have a job, you could be saving. You could be saving for to make this film. I would also tell you that you can do a lot of things with toys. You can do stop motion. All you have to do is go to Toys R Us and pick up a bunch of action figures. You can enter contests like the one that they have currently going on for Rogue One, which is stop motion with their toys. So there are lots of activities that you could do that are pretty inexpensive. Legos, that's a big community of filmmakers. So there are other ways that you can just get in there as well, just to start practicing. So I hope that's helpful, Alexander. Good luck. It's very inspiring to see you start your journey, and I'm sure that you'll get some great advice from other people down below as well. All right, thank you everybody for tuning in today. That's today's morning movie news. Please comment down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Alexander's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered on Monday, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.